And thank you for EIF for the opportunity. And I would also like to follow all protocols are observed. My name is Ms Maxi Louis, and I'm from NACSO. NACSO is an umbrella organization of non-governmental organizations, and we have been in partnership with EIF for quite a long time. And so I'm here to present CBNRM as a model for PP. Somebody was saying CBNRM is not very good for marketing, and I'm struggling with PPPs. So forgive me if I'm not mentioning the third P, because it takes time to always mention the third P. So I'll probably say the triple Ps, so that it's easier for me and for you to understand if I'm allowed by the business sector, because I'm not so sure if it's something that is doable. So for those ones that don't really have an idea in understanding what CBNRM is, CBNRM, so my presentation content, Mr. Chair, I think I was asked to do 10 slides. I did 11 slides. The last one is just thank you, which will take me a second, and I will keep within my time frame. So the content of my presentation will be explaining this acronym that sometimes people really struggle with. And then I'll also look at the role of CBNRM in climate change mitigation. I will also touch on the role of triple Ps in CBNRM and CBNRM in climate financing. A lot of these things are very much interconnected, but also some ideas in terms of how we can overcome challenges within climate change and also climate financing. It's good that Mr. Gomeho was actually talking about some of the things at a localized level that I think probably we could borrow from, not borrow. I look at CBNRM and when you're presenting, and I thought, green bonds, this is already there. So there are already made products for you that we can probably start engaging in. I'm also going to touch on some case studies. I will not spend so much time. This is just to show that in other countries, this has happened before. We can probably learn from those countries. And not just learn from those countries. I think within Namibia, we have already started with some of these products. We are doing it, but we are not doing it at the scale as it's been said in the morning. And what is next, and then I will conclude. So let's start with what is CBNRM. Let me just do it like we locally refer. Don't worry so much about the acronym. When you hear about conservancies, when you hear about community forests, when you hear about inland fisheries and other things that you are doing in communal Namibia, that's what CBNRM is. It's just an approach that we have, that we are trying to involve our local communities, and especially in rural areas, to be involved in conservation, but conservation of their natural resources. So that's what CBNRM is all about, okay? For those ones that don't work in the sector, that is what it is. But let's touch on the significance of CBNRM promoting sustainable resource management. As I said before, this has been done already, and I'll quickly run through it. So what has been significantly done already within the program that addresses some of the issues around climate change. For instance, CBNRM is very significant in terms of adaptation to climate change. So what we are doing here is just using traditional knowledge of our communities, our conservancies, our community forests, and we marry them with some scientific practices. And that's what we have been doing, and that has really worked as a model. It's not perfect, as you heard this morning, nothing is perfect, but it is working for us. The other one is local knowledge and ownership. There is ownership because the people that we are working with are the ones that are close to the resource, so they feel the ownership. So it makes it easier then to make sure that there is adaptation, and you create resilient structures to be able to address this. There is the economic factor. Over the years, we have tried in our small ways to have our own PPPs, and especially using the tourism sector to address a lot of economic development and try to alleviate poverty in rural areas by having ecotourism projects. This morning you also heard in our small ways, we have tried to do agroforestry products. So there is a lot of opportunities that we have already started doing in rural areas. Not at a scale, a lot of it I will mention in my challenges that it is done, very much at a project level, and we have to look at scaling some of these things up. But it is there. These products are there, whether it's natural products, whether it's wildlife, whether it's these things are being done, but very much at a micro level. We are complementing the efforts of government. That's what we are doing. Government sees an opportunity. Their goal is to make sure that there's inclusiveness, and that inclusiveness means that you need to involve the communities that are core in terms of these natural resources. So our 70% of Africa rural community live with these resources, and we cannot ignore that. So when you address climate change issues, when you address climate finance issues, you cannot ignore that these communities are core in terms of those developments. I've already touched on sustainable resource use. So when people are talking about sustainable resource use, a lot of it, when I hear this morning, it's all about, let's look at the Mangetina, let's look at agroforestry. Our wildlife is also very core, and that's why tourism over the years, CBNRM has addressed this gap. It's very core to what we are doing. So what has made our program to work, it's also because we are not just looking at one use, we diversify and try to encourage a lot of these uses. Biodiversity conservation, habitats, we have around, if I'm correct, 87 of these conservancies that has been registered. We have around 46 of the community forests, and now we have another new intervention, fish reserves. All this is adding up to try to protect our habitat. And what a way to do it within CBNRM. I think it's opening up landscapes for people to conserve. Obviously, there's a lot of other complexities in terms of land use and so forth that I will also share, but we have it. That's what I'm trying to say. A lot of these things are already happening in Namibia. So it's already packaged product with Akomeho that we can already start using. The other one is conflict resolution, especially when it comes to natural resources. A CBNRM is a very key structured model that we have used. For instance, when you look at good policies that, not good, I should not say good, I'm very careful, policies that has been set up to address issues, for instance, around human-wildlife conflict. We have done something, there's policies, there's projects that address this. So when it comes to conflict in terms of natural resources, we are there. Even human conflict, there's structures to be able to address a lot of these issues. So in terms of promoting significance of CBNRM with PPPs, I think we have that enabling environment and we should use it. But let's look at the issue of the role of CBNRM. What has been some of the benefits that we can look at, and I'm not a business person, I just want to put on that disclaimer before I go ahead. But we have found that what we have done so far is that looking ahead in terms of the role that PPPs can play, for instance, issues around sharing the risk. And especially from a tourism point of view, we have done it with some of the PPPs, and it has worked in some ways, and I think we can also try and scale this up at other levels. Increasing funding, that is the thing. For me, it's, we have all these good ideas, we come up here, we present, and people go out there, and I heard from some of the questions coming through, is the question of how do people access this funding? And it's expensive, especially in the areas that we work with. Somebody was saying, how do we access? It's expensive for everything that you need to go through in terms of just setting up these models and making sure a rural community in the Rongo region or in the Zambezi or wherever can access some of this funding. So it's expensive, and that is the reality. We also will benefit from, or the role that PPS can play is the issue of innovative solutions, and I will also touch a little bit more on that. It's good to have PPPs because government work at a scale, so they attract, and then you have private sector, and then you will attract quite a lot of, there is actually more trust. That's what I want to say. There is a lot more trust if you go at scale and try to use PPPs, but using government and private sector to do that. Innovation in terms of technology is very key. We heard this morning when the director of EIF was presenting that we need to look at, technologies transfer. And when you look at our rural communities, technology is quite a challenge, and when we want to make sure that we access a lot of the funding that is being talked about, we address issues around climate change, we need to look at issues around technologies, especially in our rural communities. Okay. So the other one is resource mobilization. A key one, it was mentioned this morning. We can also encourage, I'm being now, I need to rush now, that's the problem. But I think you read it and you know exactly what some of this is. I'm sorry for our communities. A lot of these issues sometimes is very highly technical and it's a big challenge for them to understand some of these issues. What can we do? What is the initiatives? I think this is the key one. It was talked about, we have already some of these projects, we need to scale up best. The payment for ecosystem services is a key one. We are a very dry country and we cannot replicate everything when it comes to carbon offsets that is happening in some of the areas. And we have to be very careful that we just don't replicate and copy things in other countries thinking that it will work for a dry country such as Namibia. But there is opportunities, especially around issues around land restoration and so forth. I'm sure there is some initiatives around that. So, for instance, I've been following issues around what can we do on these dry lands within our communities. We see there is a lot of projects. I was listening to the Windhoek one where you can apply for this. We can see that commercial farms, it's easy for them. They can apply, they can have big solar systems. Why can't we also not have this for communities? We have plenty of land out there. We have lots of sun out there. How can we not try and have communities actually own some of the wind farms or some of the solar panels and so forth? So these are some of the activities that we are looking at. How much time do I have, Mr. Chairperson? I need information, so I have to just check how much I have. Okay, so maybe I will do that within the panel discussion. Okay, the challenges quickly. A lot of things that we have learned, I've mentioned access to finance and also just technical and capacity of these communities. And I'm not just referring just to communities. When I'm talking about conservancies, also take into account, we are talking about CBOs also that are outside, please. All these things are challenges out there. The barriers, the one big barrier is policies. If our policies are not aligned to climate financing policies, for instance, issues around land use or land access, makes it very difficult in communal areas. So I will probably, if the questions come our way, I can explain more around that. Those are just some of the examples that I took from other countries. As I said, there were more examples in Namibia that we can use in terms of, upscaling, looking at what has happened in other countries, that these things work. What is next? Promoting and marketing CBNRM as PPPs, the one, yeah? Because I think and I believe we have it all. We just need to start marketing and working on this to be able to make it work. The last one, eh? Yeah, scale up. I said it already. Yeah. In conclusion, I think the link between climate financing, CBNRM, and PPPs in their potential to collaborate and reinforce sustainable mechanisms. I think that's one thing that we need to think about. Integrating approaches in climate financing strategies. So that is one. And I think this is, it is, what do you say, it's more than ever that we actually need this. A country that is going through drought, we are experiencing this. We are not responsible for this, but we are paying the price. So I think it's more than ever that we have to make sure that we get involved. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson.